Death was already sitting in the corner of the rotting shed, waiting patiently to claim 5 innocent souls. In the center of a freezing, mud-slicked hellhole deep in the Tennessee backwoods, a golden retriever lay on her side, her body reduced to a horrific map of protruding ribs and hip bones. She wasn't just thin, she was a walking skeleton, a ghost haunting her own skin. The temperature had plummeted below freezing, turning her wet, matted fur into icy needles that pricked her shivering skin. She had stopped feeling her paws hours ago. The only warmth left in her entire universe came from the 4 tiny, motionless lumps huddled desperately against her dry, empty teats. Her puppies were fading. The smallest one, a tiny, cream-colored male, had stopped crying an hour ago, his breathing shallow and erratic. The mother dog nudged him with her nose, her eyes filled with a panic that transcends species. It was the look of a mother watching her babies die and being powerless to stop it. She tried to curl tighter around them, to offer heat she didn't possess, but the bitter wind slicing through the gaps in the wood was a relentless assassin. They had been dumped here like garbage by a monster who once promised to love them, left to starve, to freeze, to be erased from the earth. But deep within this shattered animal, a spark of defiance flickered. She heard the rumble of an engine on the dirt road nearby, a sound that meant danger, but also the slim possibility of salvation. It was a terrifying gamble. The last human she saw had kicked her out of a truck, but as she looked at her blue-tinged babies, she made a choice that defies logic. She wouldn't just lie there and let the cold win. She would beg. She would scream without a voice. With a groan of agony that rattled in her chest, she forced her atrophied muscles to move. Getting up was a torture session. Her legs were like jelly, trembling so violently they could barely support her skeletal frame. She clawed at the frozen mud, dragging her hind legs until they finally locked into place. Every step sent shockwaves of pain through her body, but the image of her dying puppies pushed her forward. She stumbled toward the jagged opening of the shed, emerging into the gray, biting twilight like a specter rising from a grave. The wind hit her face, blinding her, but she locked her eyes on the figure standing by an old pickup truck just 50 yards away. Mrs. Martha, a 68-year-old widow with a heart of gold and hands worn by years of hard work, was struggling with a flat tire on the side of the road. She was frustrated, cold, and anxious to get her delivery of church donations completed. She was just about to call for help when she felt eyes on her. A chill that had nothing to do with the weather ran down her spine. She turned around, and the tire iron slipped from her gloved hand, clattering onto the asphalt. What she saw standing at the edge of the tall grass made her gasp audibly, her hand flying too, her mouth in shock. It wasn't a dog, it was a tragedy on 4 legs. The animal stood swaying in the wind, looking as if a strong gust would blow her over. Her eyes, sunken and clouded with exhaustion, locked onto Martha's face with a piercing intensity. She didn't bark. She didn't have the energy. Instead, she let out a low, mournful whine that sounded like a crying child. It was a sound so full of sorrow and desperation that it could shatter a stone heart. Martha forgot the tire. She forgot the cold. She saw only an angel in agony, begging for a miracle. Look at this poor baby's eyes. She is literally begging for her life. This is the moment she decided to trust a human one last time. Please subscribe right now and send a prayer for this mama. She needs every ounce of positive energy to survive what comes next. "Oh my God, you poor sweet soul," Martha whispered, tears instantly blurring her vision. She took a step forward, her voice trembling. "Come here, baby. I won't hurt you." The dog flinched, remembering the blows of her past master, but she didn't retreat. Instead, she did something that stopped Martha's heart. The dog took 2 shaky steps toward Martha, grabbed the hem of the woman's long coat with her teeth, and tugged gently. Then she let go and looked back toward the dark, collapsing shed. She did it again, tugged, released, and looked back. "You want me to follow you?" Martha asked, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "Is there something in there?" The dog didn't wait. Trusting that the message was received, she turned and began the agonizing crawl back to her hellish prison. Martha didn't hesitate for a second. She grabbed a flashlight from her truck and followed the emaciated creature into the tall grass, her boots sinking into the freezing mud. The wind howled louder, sounding like a warning, but Martha pressed on, driven by the urgency in the dog's gait. Entering the shed was like walking into a nightmare. the smell of mildew. And decay was overpowering. The flashlight beam cut through the gloom, following the mother dog as she collapsed back onto her pile of trash. Martha aimed the light where the dog had landed and let out a sharp cry of horror. "Oh, Jesus, no," she sobbed. Under the mother's belly, 4 tiny puppies lay motionless on the freezing dirt. The mother looked up at Martha, licked the head of the stillest puppy, and then laid her head down, her job finally done. The situation was critical. The roof of the shed was sagging dangerously low, groaning under the weight of the wind. A massive wooden beam blocked the easy access to the puppies, having fallen just inches from crushing them days ago. Martha realized with horror that she couldn't reach the back of the nest without moving the debris, and the mother dog was now too weak to stand up again. They were trapped in a collapsing structure. The temperature was dropping, and the angel of death was hovering closer than ever. The cruelty of the person who did this is beyond comprehension, a true monster who deserves to answer for this crime. But right now, justice had to wait. Survival was the only goal. Martha was alone, elderly, and facing a physical obstacle that required strength she wasn't sure she had. The puppies were silent. The mother was fading. If Martha didn't act immediately, this rescue mission would become a recovery of bodies. This brave mama held on just long enough to show Martha where her babies were. She is a true hero. Please hit the like button if you believe God sent Mrs. Martha to that road today, and leave a comment saying save them, to give them strength. Can Martha get them out before the roof collapses? The rescue is about to get intense. The situation inside the shed was a ticking time bomb. Martha stared at the heavy wooden beam that had collapsed, effectively pinning the mother and her puppies into a corner. It was a massive piece of rotting oak, heavy with water and age, creating a cage within a cage. The mother dog watched Martha with wide, terrified eyes, her body tense despite her weakness. She had led the human here, but years of abuse had hardwired her brain to expect pain. Every time the wind slammed against the shed's walls, the entire structure groaned, dropping dust and splinters onto the freezing family. One wrong move, one shift of that beam, and the roof could come crashing down, burying them all alive in this frozen tomb. Martha knew she couldn't move the timber with her bare hands. She was a widow, not a weightlifter. Panic began to rise in her throat, tasting like copper. She needed leverage. "Hang on, sweetie, just hang on," she stammered, backing out of the shed. She actually ran, back to her truck, her boots slipping on the icy mud. Her breath came in ragged puffs of white steam. She scrambled behind the driver's seat and grabbed the rusted hydraulic jack she kept for emergencies. It was heavy, greasy, and cold, but right now, it was the only tool standing between these angels and a tragic end. She grabbed a thick blanket and a basket she had in the back seat, praying her strength would hold out. Returning to the shed felt like re-entering a war zone. The mother dog let out a low, guttural growl when Martha rushed back in with the metal jack. It wasn't aggression. It was pure fear. The poor creature pressed herself flat against the dirt, shielding her babies with her bony skull. She was expecting a blow. "No, no, baby. I'm here too." "Help!" Martha cooed, her voice trembling but soft. She moved slowly, telegraphing every motion. She wedged the jack under the fallen beam, the metal screeching against the wood. The sound was piercing, and the puppies whimpered in unison, a tiny chorus of distress that broke the silence. Martha began to crank the jack handle. Click, click, click. The sound was deafening in the small space. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the freezing temperature. Her arthritis flared in her wrists, shooting bolts of fire up her arms, but she gritted her teeth and kept turning. Slowly, agonizingly, the heavy oak beam began to rise. An inch, 2 inches. The shed creaked ominously, a warning from the structure that it was being disturbed. Dust rained down on Martha's hair, but she didn't stop until there was just enough clearance to reach the puppies without crushing them. Her arms were shaking so badly she could barely hold the flashlight. She reached into the dark crevice, her hand hovering over the nest. The mother dog snapped, a weak, air-biting motion near Martha's wrist. It was a terrifying moment. If the dog bit her out of fear, the rescue could be over. An infection out here could be dangerous, and she couldn't help them if she was injured. Martha froze. She didn't pull away. Instead, she lowered her hand slowly, palm up, offering it to the terrified mother. "It's okay, Mama. I know you're scared. I know humans hurt you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a protein bar, crumbling a piece and offering it. The dog sniffed it, her nose twitching, and then, driven by starving desperation, she licked the crumbs from Martha's palm. The barrier was broken. This is the moment of truth. Grace is so scared she almost bit the hand trying to save her, but hunger and love won. She is fighting her own trauma to save her babies. If you are rooting for this rescue, please hit the like button right now. Your support powers our mission. Now let's see if the puppies are still alive. With the mother's tentative permission granted, Martha reached for the first puppy. Her heart stopped. The tiny thing was limp, cold as a stone, and motionless. "Oh no, oh please God, no," Martha gasped. She pulled the puppy out, a little black male, and rubbed him vigorously with the edge of her scarf. Nothing. No movement. No squeak. The mother dog watched, her head raised, her eyes locked on Martha's frantic hands. The tension in the shed was suffocating. Martha brought the puppy to her lips and breathed warm air onto his nose, massaging his tiny chest with her thumb. It felt like an eternity. Suddenly, a tiny, ragged cough erupted from the puppy, followed by a weak, high-pitched mewl. He squirmed in Martha's hand. "He's alive! You're alive, little fighter!" she cried out, laughing through her tears. She quickly placed him in the wicker basket, lined with the wool blanket. She repeated the process with the other three. They were all in critical condition, lethargic and freezing, but they were alive. The mother dog watched each transfer, her tail giving a microscopic thump against the dirt each time a baby was placed safely in the basket. She understood. This human wasn't a monster, she was a savior. Now came the hardest part. The mother herself. She was a large dog, and she had zero strength to stand. The adrenaline that had allowed her to walk to the road had evaporated, leaving her paralyzed by exhaustion. Martha tried to lift her, but the dog was dead weight, likely around 50 pounds even in her emaciated state. "Come on, girl, you have to help me," Martha pleaded, sliding her arms under the dog's chest and hips. The dog groaned in pain, her joints stiff and sore. The wind outside roared louder, and a piece of the shed's roof finally gave way, crashing down just a few feet from them. The exit was closing. "We have to go now!" Martha yelled, the urgency taking over. She couldn't carry the dog and the basket at the same time. She made a split-second decision. She grabbed the basket of puppies and ran them out to the truck, placing them on the passenger seat with the heater blasting. Then, she sprinted back to the shed. The mother dog was trying to crawl after her, dragging her back legs. Her eyes filled with panic that she was being left behind. "I'm coming back, I promise," Martha shouted, diving back into the gloom. She knelt beside the mother dog, wrapping her arms around the filthy, shivering animal. "I've got you," she whispered. With a heave that strained every muscle in her back, Martha lifted the front half of the dog. The dog seemed to understand. She pushed with her last ounce of strength. Together, in a clumsy, desperate dance, they stumbled out of the shed. Martha half carried, half dragged the dog through the mud, the wind whipping her hair across her face. The dog's head rested heavily on Martha's shoulder, a gesture of total surrender and trust. They reached the truck, just as the sky opened up, sleet beginning to pelt down on them. Martha hoisted the mother dog onto the seat next to the puppies. The moment the dog felt the soft upholstery and the blast of warm air, she collapsed. Her eyes rolled back in her head, and her breathing became terrifyingly shallow. She was safe from the cold, but the stress of the rescue might have been too much for her failing heart. She wasn't moving. The puppies were crying, crawling over her still body, but she didn't respond. Martha slammed the driver's door shut, sealing them in the warm cab. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably, covered in mud and blood from a scratch she hadn't noticed until now. She looked at the dog, who she decided to name Grace in that moment, and felt a pit in her stomach. The rescue was technically a success, but Grace looked like she was dying right there on the seat. The nearest emergency vet was 40 minutes away on winding, icy roads. Grace is safe in the truck, but she is unresponsive. She used every last drop of life force to get her babies saved. Are you praying for her? We need a miracle right now. Subscribe to follow her journey. Can she survive the trip to the vet? The real battle for her life starts now. The drive to the veterinary clinic was a blur of tears and terror. Martha drove with one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting gently on Grace's freezing neck, feeling for a pulse that was becoming terrifyingly faint. The old truck's heater was blasting at full capacity, but Grace was shivering violently, her body in shock. The puppies, warmed by the air vents, had fallen into a deep, exhausted sleep, piling on top of one another like a heap of dirty laundry. Martha kept talking, her voice cracking. "Stay with me, Grace. You didn't come this far to give up now. Your babies need you." But Grace's eyes were rolling back, showing the whites, a sign that her spirit was hovering between this world and the next. They screeched into the parking lot of the emergency vet clinic. Just as the rain turned to heavy snow, Martha burst through the double doors, screaming for help, carrying the basket of puppies, while a vet tech ran out to the truck for Grace. Dr. Evans, a seasoned veterinarian used to trauma, took one look at Grace's limp body on the stretcher, and his face went pale. "Code Red, get her to Trauma 1 now," he yelled. The lobby fell silent as the team rushed the gurney past, Grace's muddy tail hanging lifelessly off the edge. Martha was left standing in the waiting room, covered in mud and blood, clutching her rosary so hard her knuckles turned white. Inside the trauma room, the situation was catastrophic. Grace wasn't just starving, she was in septic shock. The initial exam revealed that she had a severe infection from an untreated injury on her leg, likely from a trap or a fence, which had poisoned her blood. Her temperature was critically low, registering at barely 96 degrees. "She's shutting down," Dr. Evans announced, his voice tight with urgency. They couldn't find a vein to insert the IV because she was so dehydrated, her blood pressure plummeting. The team had to shave her neck to place a central line, pumping warm fluids and high-dose antibiotics directly into her heart. It was a battlefield medicine scenario. The puppies were whisked away to an incubator. They were anemic and infested with fleas, but they were fighters. The real battle was for Grace. As the fluids entered her system, her heart began to race. Erratically, a condition called refeeding syndrome combined with shock. The heart monitor began to beep wildly, the jagged lines on the screen signaling a lethal arrhythmia. "We're losing her," a nurse shouted. Grace's body arched on the steel table, a final spasm of a dying system. Dr. Evans grabbed the defibrillator paddles. "Charge to 200. Clear." The sound of the shock was a dull thud against her ribcage. Silence. The monitor flatlined. Grace's heart just stopped. The vet is fighting to bring her back, but she is so weak. This is the moment we need a miracle. Please close your eyes and whisper, "Live, Grace, live." Hit the like button to restart her heart. We cannot let her story end on this table. "Come on, girl. Don't you dare quit on those babies," Dr. Evans shouted, starting manual chest compressions. He pumped her fragile chest, counting out loud, refusing to accept defeat. 1 minute passed, then 2. Martha, watching through the small glass window of the door, fell to her knees, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. She prayed not for herself, but for the innocent soul who had known only cruelty until today. Inside the room, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Just as the doctor was about to call the time of death, a faint beep echoed. Then another. Then a steady, weak rhythm returned to the screen. Grace was back. The next 12 hours were a vigil of uncertainty. Grace was placed in a heated oxygen kennel, wrapped in thermal blankets, hooked up to 3 different machines. She was in a medically induced coma to let her body heal. She looked tiny and broken amidst the technology, her golden fur shaved in patches, revealing the horrific scars of her past life. Dr. Evans came out to the lobby at 3 a.m. He sat beside Martha, looking exhausted. "She's the biggest fighter I've ever seen, Martha. Most dogs would have died in that shed days ago. She stayed alive purely out of love for those puppies. But the next 24 hours will determine everything." Martha refused to leave. She slept in the hard plastic chair, waking up every time a nurse walked by. As the sun began to rise, casting a soft orange glow through the clinic blinds, a change occurred. Inside the kennel, Grace's nose twitched. The scent of warm food was drifting from the prep area. Slowly, heavily, her eyelids fluttered open. The cloudiness was gone, replaced by a weak but clear amber gaze. She let out a tiny, squeaky yawn. The night nurse gasped and ran to get the doctor. Grace tried to lift her head, looking around frantically. She wasn't looking for water, she was looking for them. Dr. Evans allowed Martha to enter the recovery room. "She's awake, Martha. It's a miracle," he smiled. Martha approached the cage slowly. "Grace," she whispered. The dog's tail gave a microscopic thump against the bedding, but Grace was restless, whining softly. Martha knew what she needed. The nurse brought the basket of puppies, now clean, fed, and sleeping peacefully, and held them up to the glass door of Grace's kennel. Grace sniffed the air, recognized their scent, and instantly relaxed. She let out a long, deep sigh, resting her chin on her paws, her eyes locking with Martha's. It was a look of pure, conscious gratitude. The recovery was slow but steady. Over the next few days, the deadly infection receded, defeated by the antibiotics and Grace's iron will. The moment she was strong enough to stand, the staff allowed her to nurse her babies for the first time since the rescue. Watching Grace clean her puppies, her eyes bright and alert, was a spiritual experience for everyone in the clinic. The skeleton dog was gone. In her place was a mother beginning to realize she was safe. She would never be cold again. She would never be hungry again. The monster in her past was a fading memory, replaced by the gentle hands of the vet staff and Martha's loving voice. Grace survived the night. She beat the infection and is back with her babies. Are you crying? Happy tears yet? This angel defeated death because she had a reason to live. Your like helps us save more lives like Grace's. Subscribe to our channel to support our mission. Now, get ready to see the most beautiful transformation of your life. 6 weeks have passed since that freezing night in the shed, and if you saw Grace today, you wouldn't believe she is the same dog. The transformation is nothing short of biblical. The walking skeleton with the matted, muddy coat has vanished. In her place stands a magnificent golden retriever, her fur thick, lustrous, and shining like spun gold in the Tennessee sun. She has gained 20 pounds of healthy muscle, filling out her frame so well that her ribs are now just a bad memory. She holds her head high, her tail waving like a flag of victory, commanding the room not with fear but with the gentle confidence of a queen. The day of beauty was the turning point in her emotional recovery. The first time the groomer turned on the warm water, Grace flinched, expecting the biting cold of the rain, but as the warm, soapy water massaged her skin and the scent of vanilla shampoo filled the air, she melted. For the first time in her life, human hands were used solely to bring her comfort. She closed her eyes, leaning her entire weight into the groomer's hands, washing away the dirt of the shed and the grime of her past. When she looked in the mirror afterward, she seemed to smile. She knew she was beautiful again. And the puppies, those tiny freezing lumps, are now 4 chaotic, chubby balls of energy that have taken over Martha's house. They are little tornadoes of joy, chewing on slippers and chasing their own tails until they fall over, dizzy. Grace watches them from her orthopedic bed, a look of serene patience on her face. She no longer has to use her body heat to keep them alive. She can just watch them live. She plays with them now too, bowing down in a play bow and letting them tackle her, her mouth open in a wide, goofy doggy grin that reaches her eyes. The psychological scars have healed alongside the physical ones. The dog that once flinched at a raised hand now seeks it out for scratches behind the ears. Grace has become Martha's second shadow. When Martha cooks, Grace is at her feet. When Martha gardens, Grace lies in the sun nearby, keeping guard. The fear of abandonment has been replaced by the security of routine. She knows that when the door opens, it's not to kick her out, but to let her in. She has learned the sound of the kibble bag, the squeak of her favorite toy, and the tone of a voice that says, "I love you." The final scene of our story takes place on Martha's front porch on a crisp, sunny morning. It is the picture of peace. Martha sits in her rocking chair, her Bible open on her lap, reading the Psalms. Grace is resting her heavy, golden head on Martha's knee, her eyes half closed in pure contentment. In the yard, the 4 puppies are clumsily chasing a yellow butterfly, stumbling over their own paws in a display of innocent clumsiness. The wind blows, but now it doesn't bite. It just ruffles Grace's soft fur. Martha runs her hand over Grace's silky ears and looks directly into the camera, a tear of happiness catching the light. They saved each other. Martha found a purpose in her loneliness, and Grace found a savior in her despair. The monster who dumped them in that shed intended for them to be trash, but he threw away a treasure. His cruelty became the catalyst for a miracle. Grace is no longer a victim. She is a survivor, a beloved family member, and a living testament to the power of second chances. This is the happy ending Grace always dreamed of. Now I have a question for you. The person who abandoned this angel to die in the cold, do they deserve forgiveness or punishment? Let us know your honest opinion in the comments. And if you believe every animal deserves a home like this, please leave a like and comment, Amen, to bless Grace's new life. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a rescue. Together we can save them all.